Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's exploration of the post-metal genre, a genre of music that's kind of 50-50 for me in my exposure to it. There's certainly variations of it that I enjoy and others that just aren't quite my cup of tea. Russian Circles definitely leans on the latter of that. I've only heard 2 tracks from them, but both were a bit just difficult for me to get a handle on, I suppose. We're going to be looking at something off of their 2016 album, Guidance. The track's called Afrika. Let's dive into it, see what they're bringing to the table today. Fun drum part there. So we had a bit of triumphant growth in that first section. Trying to catch a vibe for this though. Contemplation, maybe? Acceptance? Meditation, something along those lines. Oh, but this is a dark direction to take it. Those crashes filling up so much space. massive sound here. Yeah, dude, the way the drummer builds up into the fills builds up through the fills is so engaging. The tremolo on these brighter melodies and harmonies, to be fair. You know what's interesting is more than any other Russian Circle song I've heard, which again, it's only been two. What were they? 309, I listened to twice, about a year and a half apart. And Harper Lewis was more recent. That was October of last year. And I think my thumbnail for the first time I checked out 309, which was September 2020. So I'd probably never heard post-metal up to that point. That was probably my introduction to it. And the thumbnail just says, so droning? That's about all I got out of that. It's very interesting to kind of see a snapshot of where I was at the beginning of the journey and where I am now. I vaguely remember not being able to hear past the production. A lot of the fuzz and distortion, I just didn't have an ear for it, and it dominated my listening experience of the track. Because I do think I was more receptive of it the second time I listened to it, and I do remember more melodic elements in it from that second listen. And I think more predominantly that's where my memories are of the song, not so much the first time hearing it. So that's neat. Then I listen to something like this. I don't know where this is placed against 309, if this came after it or prior to it. Maybe the same album? Yeah, not the same album. But this, I mean, I hear a lot of melodic elements to it. I'll hear a lot of harmonic elements. It's still very texture and atmosphere based. This is what I expect from the genre on the whole, but also from Russian Circles. They seem to do a really great job of basically taking the post-rock formula and pushing it into the realm of metal. And that's actually what I wanted to bring up at the beginning of this. I thought that's where I was originally going, and I got derailed onto my previous experiences with them. But this song in particular heavily reminds me of Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Granted, a stripped down version of it, focusing on more metallic sounds, but still the composition of it, the pacing, I think, more than anything, and the specific atmospheres, the specific harmonic elements to it. It certainly reminds me of that band. In fact, hearing this, I'd love to hear a collab between the two. I think they would find some really interesting things to do. I mean, Godspeed You already goes for a bit of a heavier sound at times, but bringing in the expertise of this group, especially with their guitar tones, I think we would have a very neat collab between the two artists. Speaking of production and tones, I mean, this stuff is just heavy. Not all the time, of course, but in those moments when the song goes big, the guitar and the bass the bass is a guitar. They get huge. They get massive. The bass fills out the entire low end as if it were 3 or 4 lower end instruments. The guitar, with all of its fuzz and distortion, dominates the sound. I do think, though, that there are 2 guitars in a couple of places. I distinctly remember hearing a more texture-based one off to the right and a more melodic-ish one in the center. But I mean, maybe that could be a lot of things too. Doesn't necessarily need to be double tracked. You could probably do that. I don't know, man. Guitarists have so many tricks up their sleeves. There's like a bajillion pedals out there. I'm sure there's some way. Ooh. How many post-metal guitarists will play a texture or a chord progression and then live loop it and put their melody on top of that the next time the repetition comes in? Because that could be what's going on here in those cases too. Maybe on the studio version it is double tracked just for ease and simplicity. But live, you could certainly loop it. There's plenty of time that the atmosphere is built first before melodic elements are brought into it. But yeah, I think that would be very cool. You don't see live looping too often outside of like independent single person bands. A lot of YouTubers like to do live looping, but I can't think of many like groups, not music, but like rock bands, metal bands, well known, who go up on stage and have looping as part of their performance. It's so much easier just to use a backing track if you need one. Plus, not all composition is designed around it because you do need repetition built in there. You need that time to make the foundation to put something on top. But this song in particular, yeah, I think there's plenty of time for that. Anyway, the tones, large, taking up so much space. It is just, between these 2 instruments, it feels like a wall of sound. And it's just 2 instruments. I like the texture on them too. Lots of fuzz, lots of distortion, but there's still clarity. And like I was saying earlier, it could just be that I've become more attuned to hearing past the fuzz, but at least to me, this is a very clear sound. I can hear these melodies. I can hear the harmonies between different parts. Even the bass, which feels massive, doesn't feel muddy. Big basses very easily can fit into that muddy realm where the notes sort of just overlap each other and turn into this just river of low-end sounds. But not here. I can hear each individual plucking of the, not plucking? Yeah. Probably finger picking, whatever, of the bass. And so like from a production standpoint, I really appreciate this, especially for noisier genres like this. It really helps me understand what they're playing and what they're going for. Now there is another instrument in all of this too, and they're the drums. Production-wise, really carved out a space for them. Despite all the space that the guitars are taking up, there's still plenty of room for the guitars. They're clearly heard in the mix. They're not too dominant. They're not overpowered by anything else. It's just really nice balance between all 3 of these. But something that I really love about the drummer is there is some tasteful use of expanded parts of the kit. We had that part in the middle section that was a bit lower energy that felt like tapping against the metallic rim of one of the drums, maybe the snare, maybe a tom, and pairing that with the hi-hat. And I think stick clicks too. There was more of a wooden sound than metallic at times, and just kind of incorporating all of this together into something that feels kind of melodic and fresh, especially against the snare and bass kick heavy use in the rest of the song. There's just a nice amount of contrast in the playing, but I brought up the transitions a couple of times, the drum fills, and I really love the way that the drummer ramps up through these fills. I noticed at the beginning of the song, I was kind of bobbing my head a bit slower. You might have been counting twice as fast, but at my slower pace, I noticed that he only had 1 beat fills. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, fill, one, and it's like a very short time to put a drum fill in, no lead up to it, just a little bit of extra burst in that one beat, maybe a whole second long. Actually, probably close to a second. We're probably looking at 60 beats per minute at that opening tempo. But as the song progresses and we get into more energy-filled sections, you'll find that the drummer tends to ramp up through his fills, where maybe he'll start with 2 snare hits and then a break and then 3 and then a break and then 4. And you can kind of feel this being pulled through to the repetition quite a bit. And I really love that, because for something like this, right, kind of static, we have melody that helps pull us through these sections, but a lot of it is, this is the energy, this is the vibe, this is the atmosphere. You're in it. What do you feel? Feel that, right? That's what post-rock, that's what post-metal does really well. It sets up an atmosphere and allows you to just melt into it, to allow it to wash over you and just feel that. It's not there to, melt your brain with sick guitar riffs. It's not there to be beautifully melodic. It's texturally and harmonically beautiful. And so some of these sections can feel like they just are. They're just sitting there. But the drummer, every 4 bars or so, kind of pulls you through it a little bit. It feels like some momentum, some direction. Even if the chord progression isn't going anywhere, the drums feel like they're leading you somewhere. It might be right back to where we are for a little bit, but it is a small burst of momentum that, at least for me, kept the song from feeling too stagnant at times. And I appreciate that. I don't know if that's just the drummer style or if it was, specifically for that, to provide these bursts of momentum. All right, we're going over here. We're going to look at this for a little bit. We're going to go over here. We're in a different part of where we were. It feels very similar, a little bit of differences, but it still feels like we moved somewhere. A lot of post-rock feels like static evolution, where you just kind of sit here and then slowly parts of it shift and reshape themselves and change around you. And it's very subtle. And by the end, you're like, wow, we're somewhere totally different, but I don't really, I can't find sections within it. It was just, natural progression. Whereas this feels a bit more segmented. We did this, we're evolving it this way. We have to walk to that area though. And the drummer helps pull us there. And it creates this flow, it creates this momentum that absolutely works for me. Now, as for what this song is doing, we've talked about emotion, atmosphere so much already. What is this song aiming for in that area? I'm still trying to figure that one out. It starts off feeling a bit positive, triumphant, maybe. Feels like something small getting large. I don't know. Like the end of a revolution, maybe. And then it dips down a little bit. And I was trying to figure out what that was. And I came across pensiveness, meditation, acceptance, things along these lines. But it ramps up in energy, slowly increasing the guitar tone away from that, not necessarily a pure clean electric sound, but increasing the grit and the compression and the distortion over time. The bass is getting louder, the volume's rising on all of this. The pensive meditation is gone. There's anxiety here, tension. Where is it taking us? What are we concerned about? The next section hits a massive height, bigger than the first part of the song, and this is just antagonistic sounds. It's eerie, it's unsettling, it's aggressive, it's dirty, it's gritty. Whatever positivity we had at the beginning of the track is gone, dashed on the floor, and replaced with the polar opposite of that. Our small revolutionary victory was just that, a small victory. There's still more to go, and the retaliation is here. This does transition a little bit more into some hopeful sounds. We have the tremolo picking on the right guitar coming in with something more positive, some higher pitched tones. That darkness is still resonant underneath, and it is still a massive sound, but within all of this, we have this voice that feels hopeful. And then the song peters out, hitting a similar melody from somewhere on the track, and it feels like a gut punch, taking what once was a bit more optimistic and putting a negative, melancholic spin on it, slowing the track down, really dragging the section out. Maybe there's even a couple of notes changed, which would indicate a key change here. The same melody adjusted to fit a new key or a new group of scales. And it just doesn't feel like we won anything. This is just one interpretation of the song. I do think that these emotions are generally correct. I don't like that word because it's still subjective. You may feel something totally different in it, but my interpretation of what the story is for those emotions is certainly subjective. I mean, you can pull a completely different narrative out of those same emotions. And trying to tie this into Afrika, I have no idea. I don't know anywhere near enough of African history to, well, even if it is anything about history, it could be about what's going on right now. It could just be, maybe the composer looked at a map of Africa and said, well, this shape here and the colors of all the parts of it, oh, it makes me feel this way, and then wrote a song. It could mean nothing. Just wrote the song, dang. Feeling very Africa after recording this. Like, you never know. Art is very subjective, and sometimes it doesn't even have to make sense. I mean, there are some titles. We're going to get off topic just a little bit, but post-hardcore as a genre is notorious for having random titles that have nothing to do with the song. I mean, there's a Kyoto song that's called, I didn't say I was powerful, I said I was a wizard. The song is about a breakup, I'm pretty sure. And the title came from just something that one of the band members said when they were joking around one day. Had nothing to do with the creation process of the song, but it was a cool phrase that they thought he said, oh, dude, that's cool, we should name a song that, and they just did. So maybe that's what's going on here, too. Like I said, unless I asked Russian Circles, I have no idea how any of this is supposed to work together, but I do know what my experience was with it, and that's the beauty of art, honestly. Especially for something like this, a bit more interpretive. There isn't a clean-cut melody. There's not a clean-cut progression through this. We don't have a verse chorus kind of idea. We don't have words to tell us what the song is about. It's interpretive. And we don't have words for it, so we're not going to do a lyrical dive here. We're just going to wrap the video up. That's my interpretation, my take, my thoughts on Afrika by Russian Circles. What do you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? If you have your own interpretation or perspective or opinion on this track, please put that and any other thoughts you have down into the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.